Now let's take a look at some of the overall page control options and tools that we have. These are things that give us some settings to work with, put us in certain modes, give us more tools to work with, and so forth. I'm going to go ahead and check out this page. And first of all, I want you to note here over here, this list of tabs. By default, it's on edit at the moment. There are 4 of them right now. I'm going to check out the page. You note a 5th one popped up called versions that will only appear if we have the page checked out. So the first one we have here is preview. And the preview tab is pretty much what you think it is. It gives you a preview of what your page will look like live on the internet. It may not look exactly quite the same. Preview is pretty much 99% accurate, but sometimes some links and special things, you note that there's a bit of a margin here that kind of squishes the page in a little bit, so its appearance will be a little bit different as far as that goes. It can be anyway, but not usually very much. It's usually pretty good. Links and such don't really work the way they normally would, so be aware of that. But other than that, if you're wanting to get a look at your page and see that everything is the way it is, then previews where you do that. The edit tab launches it into the functionality where you can begin editing the page, making changes to it. And you'll note here that in this mode, we've got 2 green buttons that have appeared, one for teaser content, one for main content. And to edit things in those areas of the website, we would click those green buttons and get to work. The next one we have is source. So this shows us the source code for the whole page. There's a bit of a caveat to that. It does not have the source code for assets that we would use, such as, for example, forms or image galleries. Those sort of items are actually referred to in another section. But everything else will pretty much appear here in the source code. If you're someone who is comfortable working in HTML or XML, you might be at home working in here. But again, it's an option. You can do everything pretty much that's basic function without having to go into source code. We have the properties tab, and properties controls a number of sort of the backstage qualities of the web page. Some of the settings, the title, the heading text, things like that. Allows us to apply tags and various search things. We'll get into that a bit more when we look at creating a new page. But you can add descriptions and keywords for Google to search and tags for the general website to search. Versions shows us a rolling history chronologically of the publication history of a page. And of course, this one has a very, very long history. That's because this is a training page that I use to demonstrate OmniCMS in class. And you'll note that over here under version, it has 78 and it's live. Live means the one that's currently live on the internet that people are seeing in terms of that. Versions can be very useful. If we've had a page, say, have a functionality problem or we need to revert a page to an earlier version, we can do so in the versions tab. We have an option, if I wanted to reset this page to what it originally was, I could go all the way down to the original version. Choose revert. It'll give me, are you sure you want to do this sort of pop-up, revert? And it will revert it and it'll save it, but it won't publish it. So we would need to publish it. And that's that big green button up here, publish. Publish will bring up a check screen. And we'll get a bit more into publish as we go across the options later. But for now, I've published it and it's reverted the page back. If I go on the edit tab, remember that line of text I added to it in a previous video? It is gone. It is the original way the page was before. Note that when I published it, it checked the page in automatically. It will always do that. It's set to do that because a lot of people sort of complete their work for the day on a page by publishing it. So it's sort of done as a way to take care of that so you don't have to worry about it. We have the multi-edit button. The multi-edit button gives us access to a certain number of items in what's called the hero section of the page. We'll cover the hero section a little bit later. Note that it changed to a save button. Whenever we're into an active edit mode, you'll have a save button pop up there. So you can save your changes. There's a couple different ways you can save changes in the system. We have publish, as we saw earlier, and publish brings up the publish dialog box. And we have some options here. We can run checks on the page to make sure that there's no issues with it. We can check the spelling on the page. And each of these options can be used by clicking the clockwise arrow. We can check if any of our links are broken. We can make sure the page is valid for W3C. And we can check accessibility. In fact, the pages will automatically check for accessibility issues and give you some indication here as to whether or not they actually have an issue. This one doesn't have any issues, so it thinks it's okay. Scheduling, this is where you can schedule to have a website, web page published at a certain time, but we've got another option for that. That's a little more widely used, and we'll cover it there. Version description. So you want to put a version description in here. This is the latest version of this page. And version description is a place where you note what you've changed for each publication of a web page. And it can be very important to note the changes that you make, particularly if it's a page you think you're going to need to revert. And I'll show you why just in a moment here. I'm going to publish this like so. I'm going to recheck the page out. And note that it gave me an indicator that the page is published, and I can also view a new window. If I click that, it's going to open another tab showing me the page live on the internet. It can be very handy. If I go into versions now, you'll see under description, it says this is the latest version of this page. That's what I had put in the version description. So if it's a page that you're going to need to revert, or you may think you may need to revert, it's always good to put a description of what was changed on the page. And it's good practice to have anyway, because if you have an issue with a page you can't resolve and you send in a support form needing fixes to the page, the description is often the notes that we can use to know what changed between versions of the page. It can help us out a little bit in resolving the issue for you. But for example, say you added a number of items to a page for an event or something, and they were sort of incremental over time, like over several days a month, you added different gifts or prizes, contests, incentives for people to sign up, and you changed it fairly frequently. And then when the month was over, you needed to revert the page back to what it had been the month prior. If you don't have description notes telling you when you made those changes, then you won't have a clear view as to which version was before all the changes. So then it comes down to going over here at the more actions icon and viewing each version of the page separately to find the one that you're wanting to revert to. So it becomes a bit troublesome to do it. So you're always best to use a description when you publish the page. The reason I don't on these training pages is simply because they're training pages. They don't have that much change to them to need it. But you should definitely do this as a best practice when you are working on your own web pages. So sheepishly escaping from that do as I say, not as I do moment, we're going to go back over to the publish button, and we have a down-facing tab here. This gives us some more advanced options for publication. The first is schedule, and we saw schedule under the other button. What this allows us to do is schedule the publication of a page at some point in the future. Like say we're going to launch a contest at midnight, 12:01 the next day, but we don't plan to be awake then, or we're going to be out of town or something else. We can come through here and set a date and time for that page to automatically publish itself, so to speak. The system will take care of itself for you. Along with that, you have a notification that you can have it send with this checkbox here, send copy to email, where it will notify you that it has in fact carried out that change. And what it's going to do is it's going to send that email automatically to all the members of the access group for the page. So everyone will know that it's published. If somebody can't access it and needs access, somebody else knows that the change has been made. So that's an option there. Another option that dropped down is submit for approval. And this might be if you have a manager who requires you to submit your saved changes of a web page to them before the page is actively published. This is what you would use. You would tell who you want to send it to. And in the case where your manager requires it, they're going to be the ones to pop up in the list. You give it the subject, the message, and again, an email notification goes out. The final one is expire, and that's the opposite of schedule. This is unpublishing the page on a certain time and date. And note replace with. Replace with basically reroutes the system to another page. So you might have your contest going and you create another page in the background that is we're sorry, this contest has expired. Please try again next year or something like that. If you have a page like that, then what you would do is you would find it in the directory structure. We'll get into using this navigation tab a little more when we get into editing pages, but the general idea is the same as navigating directory that you saw earlier via the content pages or back to pages functions. You select it, and then what happens is the page is unpublished and it will redirect users to this other page. And again, you have an email notification letting your team know that that page has been taken down. Next up, we have toggle focus mode. So toggle focus mode, now you've probably noticed that I'm on a laptop recording these. The reason I like to do this part on a laptop is because the uniformity of the size of the screen compared to what you're seeing in the video. Well, when I'm on a laptop like this, I don't have a giant 2-monitor rig or something like that. So the space I have to see is a little more limited than I would be in the office with my massive monitors. So toggle focus mode allows me to maximize the view area of the page I'm working on by removing the breadcrumb trail and the file name. So if I click that, I've got a lot more screen view here. Next up is the more actions icon. I can check pages for issues, much like I could through publish. I can save a version of the page, or I can view the published page. And finally, remember that in dashboard, we had gadgets. We also have gadgets here in the page view, and those can be accessed right here. You see, we have that little electrical plugin sort of button there. And if I click that, I get this neat panel that slides out from the right-hand side. And when you do this in your training pages, you might notice that you probably don't have anything like I do in here. And it's the same reason as it was in the dashboards, because you need to add them. And so to do that, go up to the gear wheel and select it. And once again, you have your selection here of items to click the circle check for to add. You can add what you want. I would particularly recommend that you choose page info to add. And I'll show you why in a moment, but choose all of them you want and click save. Frequently when I'm working on pages, I like to have a second tab open next to the page I'm editing. That is the live page, and sort of refer back and forth between the two as I go. And I can do that with a gadget here without having to publish the page and use that link. In my gadgets note, I used page info. I added that to the list. If I drop down this arrow here, I've got some information on this page. You notice here under page products, I have index.php and I have an F code. The F code in the brackets is used to create what is called dependency links. And we're going to get into dependency links a little bit later when we're linking things. For now, what we're interested in is index.php. If I click that, it will open the live page in a new tab. and I can go back and forth between the two to refer as I make changes and such. It's also handy because when you hit publish, you have to wait a little bit for that little pop-up to come up. Often I will publish a page and just pop over here and refresh it. So those are our general page controls that we have to work from. So now that we've got that out of the way, let's start looking at the components of pages in the next video.